The mitzvah of Sfirat Omer is clearly stated in the Torah. We have to start counting after the first day of Pesach for 49 days. And at the end of the 49 days, we bring a sacrifice to the Beit HaMikdash, various sacrifices, one of which is the sacrifice of the Omer. Today, there is no Beit HaMikdash, and there are no sacrifices. Nevertheless, there is a machloket Rishonim. There is a dispute amongst the Rishonim about whether the mitzvah that we do today is midoraita or only in memory of the mitzvah that we once did, and therefore midorabana. There's no way to paskin a shaila of this kind, although you could take sides. You might think it's doraita, you might think it's drabana. But since the machloket exists and the Rishonim were unclear, the Rishonim, it's actually back to the Gemara, is unclear about whether this mitzvah originates today in the doraita obligation or in the drabanan obligation, that means that for us it's a very important mitzvah to try to do properly. And while the mitzvah itself is easy enough to do, we have to remember that we should do the mitzvah with a minyan, standing up, preferably in the Beit HaKnesset, where we do it connected to the tefillah of Arvit. Right? We do it during the time that we daven Arvit. Hopefully, since the mitzvah Sfirat Omer should be done at the beginning of the night, then it's important to do it after Mariv, which is also said at the beginning of the night, in order to ensure that the mitzvah is properly done. As you know, there is a special way of counting, and this is again the result of a discussion in the Gemara. The way we do the mitzvah is the way it's printed in the Sidurim. There is a difference between the Ashkenazim and the Edot HaMizrach, but it's important for us to know that we do it the way the Siddur directs us to do it. That's the basic principle of Sfirat Omer. We start the night after the first day of Pesach, both in Eretz Yisrael and in Chutz La'aretz. In Eretz Yisrael, the first day of Pesach is the only day of Yontif. In Chutz La'aretz, there are 2 days of Yontif. Nevertheless, we start counting at the same time, and as a result, Shavuot, which is the day after the 49th day of counting, is on the same day, both in Eretz Yisrael and in Chutz La'aretz. The day of Shavuot, the first day of Shavuot, falls on the same day in Eretz Yisrael and in Chutz La'aretz, and that day is the day that we call Vav Sivan, the 6th day of Sivan. Now it's important to remember, I think, that Sfirat Omer, the pasuk says that you start counting Mimocharat HaShabbat, the day after the Shabbat, that we insist that the Shabbat that we refer to is the first day of Yontif, and the Baitusim, and later on the Karaites insisted that Mimocharat HaShabbat means the day after the first Shabbat in Pesach. And this argument was heated for a time, but eventually was settled. And for us, there is no doubt that the simple pshat of the words Mimocharat HaShabbat is the day after the first day of Yontif. And even though Yontif is not generally called Shabbat, it might also be called Shabbat. Because on Yontif, as on Shabbat, there are Isurei Melacha, there are things that we have to avoid, and therefore, while it's not perhaps the first choice that comes to mind. There is no reason to imagine that the words Mimocharat Shabbat could not mean the day after the first day of the Chag of Pesach, which this year comes out on the upcoming, or Motzei Shabbat, the day after Sunday night, the day after, the night after the first day of the holiday of Pesach.